For most of the 20th century, the story of human evolution was taught as a simple line, a single-file march from a knuckle-dragging ape to us, the grand finale. One species replacing the next, like chapters in a book. That story is wrong. We now know that at least 9 distinct species of humans walked this earth at the same time. They overlapped, they competed, they fought, they traded, and yes, they had children together. This is the real story of the ancient human, and it's far stranger than we ever imagined. Let's set the stage. For the past 2.5 million years, Earth has been home to multiple human species at once. Not one linear march from ape to us, but a sprawling, tangled bush of branches. You had Homo erectus, the marathon runner of evolution, the first to leave Africa, the first to control fire, the first to build structures. They lasted nearly 2 million years. To put that in perspective, we've been around for about 300,000. Erectus survived 7 times longer than we have so far. You had the Neanderthals, stocky, powerful, with brains slightly larger than ours. They ruled Europe and Western Asia for 300,000 years. You had the Denisovans, a species we only discovered in 2010 from a single finger bone. We know more about their DNA than we do about what they looked like. You had Homo floresiensis, the Hobbit, standing barely 3 feet tall, hunting dwarf elephants on an Indonesian island. You had Homo naledi, discovered in 2013 in a South African cave so treacherous that getting to their fossils requires crawling through passages barely 8 inches wide. And there were others, heidelbergensis, habilis, erectus, at least 9 distinct species of humans, often living at the same time, in the same places, competing for the same resources. In 2018, scientists analyzed a bone fragment from Denisova Cave in Siberia. It was 90,000 years old, and it belonged to a 13-year-old girl. They named her Denny.
When they sequenced her genome, they found something that shattered everything we thought we knew. Denny's mother was a Neanderthal. Her father was a Denisovan. She was a first-generation hybrid, the direct child of 2 different human species. Think about that. This wasn't a distant evolutionary relationship. Her mom and dad were from different species who met, formed a relationship, and had a child. And that child lived to be at least 13 years old. What's even more remarkable, Denny's father carried Neanderthal ancestry from hundreds of generations before his own lifetime. This wasn't a one-time event. Neanderthals and Denisovans were interbreeding repeatedly over thousands of years. As one geneticist put it, when you only have a handful of Denisovan fossils and one of them turns out to be a hybrid, that means hybridization wasn't rare. It was normal. For decades, we assumed ancient humans were simple, brutish, and barely scraping by. Every new discovery has forced us to eat those words. Take Neanderthals. In Bruniquel Cave in France, 176,000 years ago, long before modern humans ever reached Europe, Neanderthals ventured 336 meters into complete darkness. They broke off stalagmites and arranged them into 2 massive circular structures. One was over 6 meters across. They built this in absolute blackness, using fire for light, for reasons we still don't understand. Ritual? Ceremony? Something else entirely?
Or take the wooden structure discovered at Kalambo Falls in Zambia. 2 interlocking logs with deliberately carved notches. A digging stick? A wedge? This structure is 476,000 years old. That's 176,000 years before the first Homo sapiens even existed. This was built by Homo heidelbergensis, or possibly Homo erectus. They were engineers. And then there's Homo naledi, a species with a brain 1/3 the size of ours. Yet they crawled deep into the Rising Star cave system in South Africa, through passages so narrow you have to be a small person to even fit, and they deposited their dead. Deliberately, repeatedly.
And in 2025, researchers announced they found geometric engravings on the cave walls, the oldest known symbolic art, made by a species we assumed was too small-brained for symbolism. For decades, we assumed ancient humans were simple, crude, barely scraping by. Then we found the Schoningen spears, perfectly balanced wooden throwing spears made by Homo heidelbergensis 300,000 years ago. These aren't sharpened sticks, they're engineered projectiles, with the center of gravity placed exactly where it should be for throwing. Then we found that Neanderthals were making birch bark tar, a complex adhesive that requires heating birch bark to a precise temperature in the absence of oxygen. That's not simple. That's chemistry. And then there's Brunikel Cave. 176,000 years ago, Neanderthals walked 336 meters into absolute darkness, carrying fire, and built two circular structures out of broken stalagmites. The largest is over 6 meters across. We have no idea what it was for, but it required planning, coordination, and a group of people working together in the pitch black. These were not brutes. These were people. In 2003, archaeologists on the Indonesian island of Flores discovered a species so unexpected it sparked a decade of controversy. Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, stood just over 3 feet tall with a brain the size of a chimpanzee's. Yet they made sophisticated stone tools, hunting dwarf elephants, and controlled fire. In 2024, a 700,000-year-old arm bone was found on Flores that proved the species evolved from full-sized Homo erectus through a process called insular dwarfism, the same phenomenon that shrinks elephants and hippos on islands. They got smaller because on an island with limited resources, smaller bodies need less food. But here's the thing that keeps scientists up at night. If a species with a brain 1/3 the size of ours could make tools, hunt, and create art, what does that say about the relationship between brain size and intelligence? Homo naledi pushes that question even further. Discovered in 2013 in the Rising Star cave system, these small-brained humans apparently deposited their dead deep underground, in a chamber so hard to reach that only the smallest researchers can squeeze through the passages. And in 2025, evidence emerged that they carved geometric patterns into the cave walls, the oldest known engravings in the world. Here's where the story gets personal. If you're of non-African descent, approximately 1 to 2% of your genome comes from Neanderthals. If you're from Oceania or parts of Asia, you carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA. These aren't just evolutionary leftovers, they're active. A 2023 study of nearly 300,000 people identified over 4,300 Neanderthal genetic variants that are actively influencing 47 different traits in modern humans today, from immune function to metabolism. The most famous example is the EPAS1 gene in Tibetans. This gene allows them to survive at high altitudes where oxygen is scarce. They inherited it from Denisovans. An extinct species gave living people the ability to thrive on the roof of the world. Neanderthal DNA affects your immune system too. Some variants help fight pathogens, others increase your risk of autoimmune disorders. It's a mixed blessing, a gift from our ancient relatives that we're still living with. This is the million-dollar question. For 2 million years, multiple human species shared the planet. Then, around 40,000 years ago, the last Neanderthals disappeared. The Denisovans vanished around the same time. Homo floresiensis held on until about 50,000 years ago. And then there was only us. What happened? The short answer? We don't fully know. But the evidence points to a perfect storm. Climate change played a role. Ice Age Europe experienced sudden cold snaps that transformed forests into Arctic steppes. Neanderthals were specialized hunters of mammoths and woolly rhinos. When those animals disappeared, Neanderthals faced starvation. Homo sapiens, by contrast, were generalists. We ate everything: small game, fish, shellfish, plants. When one food source vanished, we switched to another. There's also the numbers game.
Neanderthal populations were tiny, just a few thousand individuals across their entire range. Small populations are vulnerable. One bad winter, one disease outbreak, and they could be wiped out. And then there's us. When Homo sapiens entered Europe 45,000 years ago, we brought new weapons, new social structures, and probably larger groups. Even a small competitive advantage, say 5% more efficient at finding food, is enough to drive another species to extinction in a few thousand years.
This field is moving fast. In 2023, researchers extracted ancient DNA from a deer tooth pendant without damaging it, and discovered it was worn by a woman from a previously unknown ancient population. In 2024, Chinese scientists announced fossils from Hualongdong that may represent a new type of ancient human, dating to 300,000 years ago, with features that don't fit neatly into any existing category. And in 2025, the Homo naledi team announced rock engravings in the Rising Star cave system, geometric patterns carved into the walls by a species with a brain the size of an orange. Every year, the story gets more complicated and more fascinating. So here's what we know. Human evolution was never a straight line. It was a bush, a tangled, messy, beautiful bush of species that met, mated, fought, and learned from each other. And here's the part that changes everything. Those ancient humans aren't really gone. Their DNA lives on in you. When you get sick, your Neanderthal genes might be helping or hurting your immune response. If you live in Tibet, your Denisovan genes help you breathe at 14,000 feet. We used to think we were the only humans who ever mattered. Now we know we're just the last one standing. And we carry our ancestors, all of them, inside our DNA. The ancient human isn't a fossil, it's a mirror. And when we look closely enough, we see ourselves looking back.